Step back!
I said step back, sir.
Calm down. Don't tell me to calm down. Hands on the hood now.
I'm complying.
Hey, watch it.
Stop resisting.
You're making a mistake.
Quit
fighting me.
I'm not resisting.
Dispatch suspect resisting.
It started like any other Tuesday night. Quiet streets, empty sidewalks, and the sound of rain hitting the hood of a patrol car. Officer Nolan Reeves was patrolling the west side of town, the part most officers try to avoid. He wasn't nervous. He was confident, even a little cocky. 3 years on the force had made him believe he could handle anything. But what would happen over the next 10 minutes would destroy that confidence, end his career, and put him at the center of a national scandal. By the time the night was over, he would be known as the man who arrested his own police chief. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Please subscribe if you haven't already. Stories like this need to be told, and your support helps make that possible. The clock on Nolan's dashboard glowed 10:42 p.m. He was sipping his coffee, eyes half on the road and half on the radar screen. The rain blurred the streetlights, turning them into streaks of gold. Up ahead, a dark blue sedan drifted into the next lane without signaling. Nolan frowned. Simple traffic stop, he thought. Nothing major. But he had been in a bad mood all night. A complaint had been filed against him the week before, and his supervisor had mentioned another incident report in passing. He needed a clean stop on record, something to balance out the negatives. He turned on his lights. The sedan slowed down and pulled over neatly to the side. Perfect. Nolan parked behind it, radioed in the plate number, and stepped out of his cruiser. The rain hit his uniform hard. He adjusted his belt, wiped his face, and approached the car slowly. The driver rolled the window down halfway. Inside was a man in his late 40s, calm and composed. He wasn't on his phone, wasn't fumbling for documents, just sitting still with both hands visible on the steering wheel. Something about his posture made Nolan uneasy. It was too calm, too sure. "License and registration," Nolan said firmly. The man nodded and replied in a quiet voice that his license was in his wallet and registration in the glove box. Nolan told him to move slowly, and the man did exactly that, steady, polite, and no sudden moves. He handed both documents over. Nolan looked at the name, Leonard Tate. The name didn't ring a bell. He handed the registration back, keeping the license, and walked to his patrol car. The computer search came back instantly. Clean record, no tickets, nothing suspicious. He should just issued a warning and let the man go. But Nolan hesitated. Something about the man's tone had rubbed him the wrong way. He hated when drivers sounded too calm, like they didn't take him seriously. He decided to ask a few extra questions. When he returned to the car, he asked Tate where he was coming from. Tate said he had just left a community event at the Civic Center. Nolan asked what kind of event. Tate said it was a public safety meeting. His voice stayed level, with no sign of irritation. That calmness got under Nolan's skin. He wanted to see if Tate was hiding anything. "Step out of the vehicle," he said. Tate looked puzzled but complied. He opened the door and stepped out, standing tall under the drizzle. He was about 6 feet, of solid build, and dressed in jeans and a gray jacket. No sign of aggression. Nolan told him to place his hands on the car. Tate hesitated just a second. "Officer," he said, "is there a reason for this?" Nolan didn't answer directly. "Hands on the car," he repeated. His tone was sharper now. Tate slowly did as he was told. Nolan started patting him down. No weapons, no drugs, nothing unusual. Just a phone, wallet, and car keys. Still, Nolan felt a strange pressure in his chest, a mix of authority and irritation. He didn't like that this man was questioning him, even politely. It felt like a challenge. When Tate shifted his weight slightly, Nolan snapped. "Don't move," he said, pressing a hand against his shoulder. Tate said he wasn't resisting, that he was just trying to keep balance on the wet pavement. But by then, Nolan's patience was gone. The next few seconds were chaos. Nolan grabbed Tate's wrist, twisting it behind his back. Tate tried to steady himself, which only made Nolan push harder. Tate stumbled, his foot slipping on the slick ground. Nolan took that as resistance and shoved him forward. Tate fell hard, hitting the front of his car before sliding to the ground. For a moment, everything went silent except the sound of rain. Tate groaned, his face turned toward the pavement. Nolan's chest camera recorded it all. His breathing was heavy. Adrenaline made his hands shake. He called it in. Suspect resisting, in custody. A statement that was already a lie. Nolan cuffed Tate, who didn't fight back. Blood mixed with rainwater on the road. Tate's voice was calm, but firm, when he finally spoke. "You just made a mistake," he said quietly. Nolan didn't respond. He dragged Tate up and guided him toward the patrol car. His brain was spinning. Why did he say that? When he put Tate in the back seat, he glanced again at the license on his dash. Leonard Tate. The name still didn't mean anything to him. He closed the door and tried to steady his breathing. Then his radio crackled. "Unit 21, status check. That license you ran. Confirm name Leonard Tate." "Yes, confirmed," Nolan said. A short pause. Then the voice on the other end sounded suddenly alert. "Stand by. Repeat, stand by. Do not transport." Nolan frowned. "What's going on?" "Officer Reeves," the dispatcher said, "you need to confirm the suspect's identity immediately." That's Chief Tate. Chief Leonard Tate." The words didn't make sense at first. Then they hit him like a punch to the gut. He froze, staring through the rain at the man sitting silently in the back seat. The chief of police. His boss. Nolan's mouth went dry. He could hear his own heart pounding in his ears. His hands trembled as he reached for the car door. Tate looked up at him through the glass, blood running down his temple, his expression unreadable. Every instinct told Nolan to fix it somehow, to undo what he had just done. But there was no way back. His camera had captured everything. The radio logs had recorded his false statement. His supervisor was probably already on the way. He stood there in the rain, completely still, knowing his life was about to fall apart. Nolan stood beside his patrol car, drenched, his heart pounding like a drum. His hands trembled as the dispatcher repeated, "Do not transport, Officer Reeves. Supervisor is en route." The words echoed in his ears, each one heavier than the last. He glanced back through the window. Chief Leonard Tate sat still in the back seat, his face bleeding, his expression calm, but cold. The silence was unbearable. The rain fell harder. Nolan leaned against his car, trying to breathe. He could feel his career slipping away right there on the side of the road. He wanted to apologize, to explain, but what could he possibly say? He had just slammed his own police chief into the pavement for no reason. And every second of it was recorded on his body camera. Before we continue, where are you watching from? If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. Stories like this one take courage to tell, and your support helps bring them to light. 5 minutes later, 2 patrol cars arrived. Sergeant Miller stepped out first, her flashlight cutting through the rain. When she saw Tate sitting cuffed in the back seat, her face went pale. "What did you do, Nolan?" she whispered. Nolan opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He just shook his head. Miller walked quickly to the back door and opened it. "Chief, sir, are you okay?" Tate didn't answer at first. He looked straight ahead, then said quietly, "Get these handcuffs off me and call an ambulance." His tone wasn't angry. It was worse. It was calm, controlled, like someone holding back a storm. Miller immediately unlocked the cuffs. Tate rubbed his wrists and winced as he stood up. His shoulder was clearly injured. Nolan took a small step forward, wanting to help, but Miller shot him a look that froze him in place. "Back to your car, Officer Reeves," she ordered. Her voice was sharp and professional but filled with disbelief. Nolan obeyed, his feet heavy on the wet pavement. He sat in his patrol car, staring at the steering wheel. He didn't even turn off his camera. What was the point? Everything was already recorded, every bad decision, every mistake. An ambulance arrived soon after. The paramedics helped Chief Tate onto a stretcher. One of them muttered, "What the hell happened here?" Nolan heard, but didn't answer. He just sat there, soaked and silent, watching red and blue lights reflect on the puddles around him. When the ambulance pulled away, Miller walked back to his window. "You're to report directly to headquarters," she said flatly. "Leave your patrol car here. I'll drive you." The ride was silent. Nolan stared out the window, trying to rewind time in his head, wishing he'd just given a warning and moved on. But there was no rewinding this. He had crossed a line he could never uncross. At headquarters, the mood was strange, half shock, half disbelief. The few officers still there looked at him with confusion, some with disgust. Nobody spoke. Nolan was led into a small office and told to wait. The ticking clock on the wall felt louder than his own heartbeat. After 20 minutes, Captain Ruiz walked in. He was an older man with gray hair and a calm face, but his eyes looked tired. "Officer Reeves," he said, sitting down across from him. "Do you have any idea who you put in cuffs tonight?" Nolan swallowed hard. "Yes, sir. I didn't know at first. I didn't recognize him." Ruiz sighed and leaned back. "You tackled the chief of police during a routine traffic stop. You filed a false report claiming resistance. And the whole thing was caught on your body camera. Tell me, how do you think this looks?" Nolan's throat felt dry. "I thought he was being evasive," he muttered. "He questioned me, and I thought." "You thought wrong," Ruiz interrupted. "You escalated a calm situation into violence. Do you realize what you've done? You didn't just hurt the chief. You've put the entire department under a microscope." Nolan couldn't look up. Ruiz stood and handed him a paper. "You're suspended effective immediately. Badge, weapon, and ID. Turn them in." Nolan placed his badge on the desk. His gun followed. It felt like giving up a part of himself. Ruiz looked at him for a moment, then said quietly, "You'd better get a lawyer. Internal Affairs will want your full statement in the morning." When Nolan walked out of the building, the rain had stopped. The city was silent, but his mind wasn't. Every mistake played back in his head like a bad movie. The shove, the fall, the blood. The chief's voice said, "You just made a mistake." He went home, but couldn't sleep. His phone buzzed nonstop. Texts from other officers, news alerts, messages from people he didn't even know. Someone had leaked the story before sunrise. Officer detains police chief during traffic stop. Incident under investigation. By morning, every local news channel was covering it. The department's spokesperson gave a short statement saying they were aware of the incident and reviewing the footage. Nolan's name hadn't been released yet, but everyone inside the station already knew. At 9 a.m., Internal Affairs called him in. The room was plain, just a table, 2 chairs, and a recorder. Across from him sat Investigator Collins, a woman known for being fair but strict. She pressed record. "State your name for the record," she said. "Nolan Reeves." "Officer Reeves, this interview is part of an official investigation into your actions on October 12th. You have the right to an attorney. Do you wish to proceed without one?" Nolan nodded. "Yes, ma'am." "Walk me through what happened last night," she said. Nolan explained everything: the lane change, the stop, the calm driver, the questions, the order to step out. He said he thought Tate was hiding something, that he had tensed up when being searched. Collins listened without expression. When he finished, she asked, "Did the suspect ever threaten you?" "No." "Did he reach for a weapon?" "No." Did he raise his voice or act aggressive in any way? Nolan hesitated. No, he didn't. Then what exactly made you feel you needed to use force? He couldn't answer. He looked down, hands clasped tightly together. Collins leaned forward. Officer Reeves, we have the body camera footage. We've already seen it. The chief did nothing wrong. You escalated for no reason and then reported false resistance. That's serious misconduct. Do you understand that? Nolan nodded slowly, his voice breaking. Yes, ma'am. She turned off the recorder. You'll be notified when the findings are complete. For now, go home. Stay available for further questioning. When Nolan stepped outside, reporters were already waiting by the entrance, shouting questions. Cameras flashed as he walked past. He didn't answer any of them. He just kept walking, trying to hold himself together while the world around him fell apart. At the hospital, Chief Tate was recovering. 6 stitches above his eye, bruised shoulder, and a mild concussion. But his focus wasn't on the pain, it was on what came next. He knew this wasn't just about him. It was about what his officers were capable of when they thought no one important was watching. And he intended to make sure the whole city saw exactly what had happened that night. By the next morning, the story wasn't just local, it was everywhere. News anchors repeated the same shocking headline. Officer arrests police chief during traffic stop. The video hadn't even been released yet, but rumors spread faster than facts ever could. Social media exploded with opinions. Some people defended the officer, saying maybe he didn't know. Others were furious, saying this was proof of how out of control policing had become. At the police department, the mood was tense. Officers whispered in the hallways, wondering what the footage showed. Many couldn't believe Nolan Reeves had actually taken down Chief Tate. The chief wasn't just their boss. He was respected, even liked. He'd spent years cleaning up the department, firing bad cops, improving community trust. And now one of his own officers had thrown him to the ground like a criminal. Before we continue, where are you watching from? If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. It helps us share stories that deserve to be seen. Chief Leonard Tate left the hospital after 2 days. His face was bruised, his shoulder in a sling, but he was steady when he stood in front of cameras outside City Hall. The crowd was quiet as he spoke. What happened to me was wrong, he said clearly, but this isn't just about one officer. It's about how our system allows aggression to go unchecked. Reporters shouted questions, but he didn't stay long. He promised a full investigation and said the footage would be released publicly once the internal review was complete. That statement alone sent a chill through the department. Everyone knew what that meant. No cover-ups, no editing, no protecting reputations. The public would see everything. 3 days later, the footage was released. It began with rain, flashing lights, and a calm voice asking for a license and registration. The video was clear. Tate was polite, cooperative, and calm from start to finish. Then, without warning, Nolan grabbed his arm and forced him to the ground. The sound of his head hitting the pavement made viewers flinch. Blood mixed with water. Nolan's voice came through the mic. Suspect resisting. The city erupted. People couldn't believe what they were seeing. Thousands shared the clip online with captions like, "If this happens to the chief, imagine the rest of us." Within hours, national networks picked it up. Civil rights groups called for justice. Talk shows debated whether Nolan should face charges. That night, the police department's phone lines were flooded. Protesters gathered outside City Hall holding signs that said, "Accountability for all," and "No badge above the law." Chief Tate didn't attend the protest, but he watched from his office window. He saw ordinary citizens, men, women, teenagers, standing in the rain demanding change. It moved him deeply. Meanwhile, Nolan's life was unraveling. He couldn't go outside without being recognized. Reporters camped outside his house. He shut off his phone, stopped answering messages, and stayed in his living room for days. His parents begged him to make a public statement, but he refused. "Anything I say will make it worse," he told them. Internal Affairs completed their investigation 2 weeks later. The findings were devastating. They concluded that Nolan had violated multiple policies: unlawful use of force, failure to de-escalate, and filing a false report. The recommendation was termination. He was officially fired the next morning. When he handed in his uniform, no one looked at him. He walked out of the station for the last time, the sound of rain hitting the pavement again, just like that night. But it didn't end there. 3 days later, the district attorney announced criminal charges against him: assault, battery, and filing a false police report. He was arrested at home in front of the media. Cameras flashed as officers led him away in handcuffs, the same kind he had used on the chief. The trial date was set for 4 months later. In that time, the story grew even bigger. Documentaries covered it. News outlets replayed the video every week. Commentators argued on live TV. Some said Nolan was reckless but not evil. Others said he was the symbol of everything wrong with modern policing. When the trial finally began, the courtroom was packed. Reporters filled every seat, and cameras waited outside the courthouse. Nolan sat at the defense table, pale and nervous, his hands clenched together. Across from him sat Chief Tate, calm as ever. The prosecutor started strong. He played the body camera footage on a large screen for the jury. Every sound, every movement, every command echoed through the room. When Tate's head hit the ground, a gasp went through the audience. The prosecutor turned to the jury. "This wasn't a mistake," he said. "It was arrogance, poor judgment, and abuse of power." Chief Tate posed no threat. Yet Officer Reeves used force, lied about resistance, and never called for medical help until ordered. That's not fear. That's misconduct. Nolan's defense attorney argued that his client had simply been on edge, that he didn't recognize Tate, and that it was a split-second decision. He said Nolan had been under pressure after recent complaints and made a terrible error in judgment. Chief Tate took the stand on the 3rd day. The room fell silent as he entered. His scar was still faintly visible above his right eyebrow. He described the stop calmly, step by step. He said he had complied with every instruction and never once resisted. The defense attorney asked, "Chief, why didn't you identify yourself as the head of the department?" Tate looked at him steadily. "Because I shouldn't have to," he said. "Every person, uniform or not, deserves to be treated with respect during a traffic stop. My title shouldn't determine how I'm treated." The courtroom was silent. Even Nolan looked down, unable to meet his eyes. After 4 days of testimony, the jury deliberated for only 6 hours. The verdict: guilty on all counts. When it was read aloud, Nolan closed his eyes. His mother cried quietly in the back row. Tate didn't smile or show satisfaction. He just nodded slowly, as if confirming what he already knew, that justice had been done, but at a heavy cost. Sentencing was scheduled for 3 weeks later. Outside the courthouse, hundreds gathered again. Some called for deeper reforms, saying one conviction wasn't enough. Others thanked Tate for not hiding the truth, for showing that accountability mattered, even when it was painful. That night, Tate sat alone in his office long after everyone else had gone home. He watched the body camera footage one more time, not to relive it, but to remind himself why he had chosen to release it. He thought about the citizens who never got justice, the ones who weren't recorded, and the ones whose voices never made it past the complaint desk. That thought hurt more than any bruise ever could. This wasn't about revenge or embarrassment. It was about change. Real change. And he was going to make sure it started right there in his department. But the hardest part was still ahead. The sentencing, and what would happen after, would decide whether the story ended in redemption or tragedy. The courtroom was packed once again. This time, it wasn't about guilt or innocence, it was about punishment. Cameras lined the back wall, their red lights blinking. Reporters whispered quietly, waiting for the moment the judge would return. Outside, hundreds stood in the cold holding signs. Some read justice for all. Others read end police abuse. Nolan Reeves sat at the defense table, pale and exhausted. His once firm posture was gone. His hands were cuffed in front of him, and his eyes were red from nights without sleep. Behind him, his mother sat silently, clutching a tissue. Across the aisle, Chief Leonard Tate sat alone. He wasn't there for revenge. He'd already made peace with what happened to him. He was there because the system needed to see this through. It wasn't about him anymore. It was about what came next. Before we continue, where are you watching from? If you haven't already, please subscribe. These real-life stories deserve to be told, and your support helps make that possible. The judge entered, and the room rose. Judge Harlan was known for being firm but fair. He adjusted his glasses, looked over his notes, and began. "This case has received national attention," he said. "But at its core, it's about accountability. Officer Reeves, you were trusted with authority. That trust was broken the night you used unnecessary force on a man who was calm, compliant, and cooperative. The fact that the man was your own chief only makes the betrayal deeper." He paused. The room was still. However, the judge continued, "The court also recognizes that you have no prior record, that you immediately cooperated after the incident, and that you have shown remorse. The purpose of this sentence is not only punishment, but reflection." Nolan's attorney placed a hand on his shoulder. The judge looked directly at him. "For the charge of assault, you were sentenced to 1 year in county jail, suspended. For filing a false report, 6 months in custody. You will serve 4 months, with the remainder on probation. Additionally, you are ordered to complete 500 hours of community service, focusing on public accountability and ethics training." A mix of gasps and murmurs filled the room. Some thought it was too light. Others thought it was fair. Nolan closed his eyes. 4 months. It wasn't freedom, but it wasn't the end of his life either. When court adjourned, Chief Tate stood and approached him quietly. A deputy stood nearby, ready to escort Nolan out, but paused when he saw Tate raise a hand. The chief didn't speak right away. He just looked at the young man who had once served under him. Finally, he said softly, "I hope you learned something from this, not just about rules, but about people." Nolan nodded, his voice barely a whisper. "I already have, sir. I'm sorry." Tate nodded once, then turned and walked away. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was enough to let the air feel lighter for the first time in months. 2 months later, the city began to change. Chief Tate launched a department-wide program called the Mirror Initiative. Every officer, rookie or veteran, was required to complete an empathy and accountability course that included community visits, public listening sessions, and joint projects with neighborhood leaders. Body camera reviews became mandatory in training sessions. The footage wasn't used to shame, it was used to teach. Officers started to see the job differently. They began to realize that authority wasn't just about control, it was about responsibility. Some complained at first, saying it made them look weak. But others, especially the younger ones, said it reminded them why they joined the force in the first place. Community members noticed the difference too. People who once crossed the street to avoid patrol cars now stopped to talk. The city slowly began to trust again. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. As for Nolan, he served his sentence quietly. No interviews, no statements, no attention. The jail time was short, but it was enough to change him. He worked in the kitchen, read a lot, and talked with inmates who had once been on the other side of his badge. Those conversations humbled him. One man told him, "You ever notice how nobody cares about what happens until it's on camera?" That stuck with Nolan. It made him realize that his mistake, horrible as it was, had forced people to finally look. When he was released, no one was waiting for him outside. He walked out with a small duffel bag, and the clothes he'd been arrested in. He didn't go home right away. Instead, he took a bus to a nearby park and sat on a bench until sunset. For the first time in a long time, he didn't feel like a cop or a criminal, just a man trying to start over. Months passed. The media moved on. News stories took over the headlines, but within the city, people still remembered. Nolan began volunteering at a local youth center, teaching kids about choices and consequences. He never mentioned who he was unless someone asked. He didn't need to. His actions spoke louder. One afternoon, he was helping a group of teenagers set up for a safety workshop when a familiar car pulled into the parking lot. A black sedan with government plates. Chief Tate stepped out, dressed in plain clothes. Nolan froze for a second, unsure what to do. Tate smiled slightly. "Didn't expect to see me here, did you?" "No, sir," Nolan said quietly. "I heard what you've been doing," Tate said. "Community work, mentoring kids. I wanted to see it for myself." Nolan didn't know how to respond. Tate looked around at the kids laughing and running inside. "You made a big mistake," the chief continued. "But you didn't waste it. That counts for something." Nolan nodded. "I'm just trying to do the right thing now." Tate extended his hand. Nolan hesitated, then shook it. For the first time since that rainy night, there was peace between them. A year later, the story of the traffic stop gone wrong became part of police training across the country. Recruits watched the footage, not to judge, but to understand how one moment of poor judgment could destroy a life and rebuild another. Chief Tate retired 2 years later, leaving behind a stronger department than before. Nolan continued his community work and eventually became a consultant for training programs about ethics and emotional control. Neither man ever forgot that night, but both chose to turn it into something bigger than themselves. And that's how a single mistake, caught in the rain, under flashing lights, ended up changing an entire city.